Hello, welcome back to Brilliant Blue Reviews. My name is Heather, and I just came out of the movie theater on this very hot and windy October day. Go figure, kind of went with the movie. And the movie that I just saw by myself on a Thursday afternoon was The Lost Bus. Okay, this movie did not come out where we live. I'm over here visiting my daughter near her college right now. I'm actually going to go pick her up in a minute. She had to do something, so she couldn't go with me, and she actually was a little bit wary about seeing this movie because she was afraid it was going to be too scary and intense, which it probably would have been for her. This is a movie that is based on a book, it said at the end, which is based on the true events of the Camp Fire, which was the worst fire in the history of California. This happened in November of 2018, so the movie is generally based on the real events of the Camp Fire and this specific story of this bus driver and this teacher and these kids that were on this school bus and what happened to them. Now, I have read this story before. I want to say I read about it in Reader's Digest, like it was a true life story that Reader's Digest did a story about one time. I think that might be where I read it, but I'm pretty sure they stick pretty close to the actual events in this movie. Maybe there's a couple of tiny tweaks. I don't know. But it was very, very intense and terrifying. I mean, like there's a couple parts that almost border on horror movie because it's so insane what happens. Like every possible thing that could go wrong goes wrong. And it's really genuinely quite scary. But like, I wasn't ever like, I didn't have to cover my eyes. I didn't have to like look away. I wasn't distraught. It was very intense. You were very on the edge of your seat through the whole thing. It's rated R, but I think that the main reason it's rated R, probably just the perilous situations. I mean, it's a very upsetting situation. And I guess probably the other thing would probably be language. There's, quite a few uses of profanity here and there, most of the time because for a legitimate reason, because they're scared out of their minds and don't know what to do. Otherwise, nothing gross or anything is shown, and there's nothing really violent, or there's no nudity. There is several scenes of people on fire. So, like people actually caught on fire, but then like somebody comes and puts it out on them right away. So at the end of the movie, it does tell you the general statistics of the Camp Fire, what happened. 13,500 homes were destroyed and 85 people lost their lives. They determined in a lawsuit that PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, the power company, was responsible for this particular fire and 22 other wildfires, it said. And they were found, or they pled guilty, and they had to pay, I remember it was the same as the number of houses that were burned, 13.5 billion? I want to say it was billion in a settlement to the people that were affected by this fire. I'm pretty sure that's right. So that was at the end, and they also put what happened to the main characters, which are Kevin, the bus driver, who's played by Matthew McConaughey, and Mary, the teacher that was on the bus, who's played by America Ferrera. Those two absolutely, holy man, deserve so many accolades for this movie. They did an amazing job. I can't even imagine what they had to go through to film this thing. The other, like, real heroes are the child actors. I mean, this had to be a very scary movie for them to film. I don't know how much of it was maybe like special effects and CGI, like of the actual perspective on the bus. I'm not sure. So maybe the child actors didn't go through as much as I think they did, but they definitely included, and you could see it at the end in the credits, it said where they got all the footage from. They were definitely including actual footage from like news agencies and things like that, and the different law enforcement agencies and fire agencies and stuff like that. There was lots of scenes and video, aerial views, but also like just every once in a while there would be something thrown in that I'm like, boy, that looks like actual news footage that they must have shown at the that they must have filmed at the actual time this was happening. And so that really gave it of course it was authentic because it's an actual story. It's an actual thing that happened. But it had a very authentic feel. The one thing about it that I should warn you about is some of the scenes, I guess I would say, I know what they were. Any scene from the perspective of the firefighters. So when they were showing the firefighters and the stuff that they were doing, those scenes had a very like handheld kind of feel, or like, you know, as if the camera was mounted on the front of the fire truck or something. And they were very shaky and, you know, moving around a lot and stuff. And so those parts, I did almost feel a little bit queasy just because of the intense motion. The movie is directed by Paul Greengrass, and Paul Greengrass, I know the name. He directed at least a couple of the Bourne movies, The Bourne Identity with Matt Damon. And so he's a very good director, and he did a phenomenal job with this. He did a really, really good job. The other character that really stuck out to me, because there's not very many characters in this movie, was Yul Vasquez, who, that actor, the only thing that sticks out in my mind, I mean, I know I've seen him in other things too, but he played Captain Martinez, I think it was, the fire captain that was in charge of this whole thing. And he did a really good job in this. But the other role I've seen him in, which was also perfect for him, he has that very cool kind of gravelly, serious voice. And he played the captain of one of the Navy ships that go to rescue Captain Phillips in the movie Captain Phillips with Tom Hanks, which was also based on a true story. He just has this very commanding yet calm presence that made him perfect for this part, and also perfect in Captain Phillips. But this is like the second time I've seen him that he's really stuck out to me, like as a central character. It basically just shows you 2 days of time, the day before the fire and the day of the fire. And I don't know how long the fire actually lasted, if it lasted more than a day, but it's basically just like one kind of setup day and then one really intense, hellish day. Like literally at one point, the bus is driving through the flames. Matthew McConaughey is flooring the bus to try to get through the fire, and the kids are screaming, "I don't want to die." Okay? So it's like really, really intense. It's like they go through hell, literally. But it starts out really like kind of setting it up with the character of Kevin, Matthew McConaughey's character, and his life is just crap. He is having just a total time of it. Nothing is working out. He and his wife have gotten divorced, I think. He's not having a good relationship with his son, Sean. He's had to come back, moved back to Paradise, California after living in Reno for a number of years because his dad died and now his mom has nobody to take care of him. So it's as if he and his son have now come to live with his mother, who's, I don't know if she's wheelchair bound. She's got some mobility issues anyway. Now, something interesting that I didn't realize, and I only caught it when I saw the credits at the end, was the woman playing his mom was Matthew McConaughey's actual mother, and playing his son was Matthew McConaughey's actual son. So that was kind of interesting. He had his own mom and his own son actually playing his mom and his son in the movie, which was kind of cool. But like, it sets up this whole thing with Kevin and like how his life is just not going great. And you learn more along the way from him and Mary, the teacher, talking about things about their lives that they both have regrets about because they're in this very perilous situation. The quieter moments of the movie were them talking to each other as they're trying to evacuate these kids and kind of sharing like, what would we change about our lives if we knew we were going to die right now? So that was kind of the softer moments. But otherwise, it's very fast-paced, it's very intense, it's very realistic, because like I said, they're including actual footage, you know, with the stuff that they shot for the movie too. And oh my gosh, they just go through it. The two scenes that really caught me, like as far as like how scary this was for them, for Kevin and Mary and these kids on this bus. One is there's a point where traffic is just insane. They can't get anywhere because the traffic is all backed up. And not only can they not get anywhere on the bus, but the cars, you know, are just backed up for miles trying to get out of this area that's on fire. And the fire trucks are trying to get in, and they can't get in. And at one point, Matthew McConaughey's character, Kevin, has Mary, the teacher, drive the bus, and he gets off the bus and starts directing the traffic himself because the cop is having such a hard time and can't get anybody to move where they need to go. This is further complicated by the fact that the radios are all down and nothing's working. Now, the reason it's called the Lost Bus is because shortly after he picked up these kids from this elementary school, now these were kids whose parents could not get to them to pick them up to evacuate them in time because they worked far away or out of town or whatever. And so their main job was just, it was 23 kids, and they had to pick them up from this one elementary school, and they were supposed to take them to this other elementary school. Now, unfortunately, what happens is it takes, first of all, a lot longer to get from the one to the other. It was supposed to take like 10 minutes. It does not take 10 minutes, okay? And when they finally get to the other elementary school, they don't know that now everything has been evacuated. Not just the area where their elementary school was, but like the whole area has been evacuated. And the reason they don't know that is because shortly after he picked up the kids and the teacher, the dispatch center where the bus is from was also evacuated. And so they were no longer in contact. And even prior to that, the radios weren't working. There was also no cell phone signal. So they had no communication with anyone off of this bus. And that was a real problem because they didn't know what the situation was around them. Tiny spoiler here. When they got to the elementary school where they thought they were supposed to be taking these kids originally, that elementary school was literally on fire and no one was there. So then they had to figure out what to do next and where to go. They figured out pretty quickly because where they end up going, which was in Chico, California, was the known next evacuation site. And they know that that's where they have to go. The problem was how to get there and getting through everything. The other part, besides him having to get off the bus and direct the traffic, that really struck me was there was one point where people had started looting and were very desperate. And there were people outside the bus trying to get onto the bus and steal the bus because their cars were all on fire and stuff. And some of them had guns. Or at least one guy had a gun. And he was like banging on the bus door trying to get in with this gun. And they were very scared at that point and had to do something pretty drastic to get away from this guy. And these people that were like just stealing whatever they could to get away from the fire. So that was a really intense point. There were two parts, I would say, that were very emotional for me that actually made me kind of tear up. One was while the bus was still lost, all the parents were at this Chico reunification site, and the dispatch lady from the bus place, from the school bus headquarters or whatever, from the base, had gotten there with the rest of the drivers and everything, and she had to explain to all the parents that were waiting there for their children that they didn't know where their children were. That their children were on a bus, that they had been picked up, and that this was the driver that was with them, and this was the teacher that was on the bus with them, but they had no idea where the bus was. And you could just see the agony on these parents' faces, like, where is my child? You know, so that was very emotional. And then the other scene that was very emotional was at the very end when the bus finally does get there. These people all survived. You know, the kids and the driver and the teacher on the bus, they all survive. Otherwise, we wouldn't know the story. When they get there and they actually are able to deliver the kids to their parents. I don't know how, as a parent, you couldn't get emotional and kind of choked up and teary at that part. So that was very emotional too. So it was a very good movie. It is very intense. It probably is too scary and intense for kids, and that's why it's rated R. But even I would say, like, you know, my daughter's a young adult. She's in her 20s. But she didn't want to see this because she thought it would affect her too much. And I think she was probably right. If you or someone you want to see the movie with is even rather a sensitive person and you just don't like really intense stuff like that where, you know, this is a life and death, real life situation that happened, you may want to skip this one. But for everyone else, I would say it's incredibly well done, wonderfully acted, very intense, really realistic, and I give it 5 out of 5. So my rating is 5 out of 5 for The Lost Bus, starring Matthew McConaughey, America Ferrera, directed by Paul Greengrass. This theater that I just saw it in is the only place I've seen it, and it was not anywhere else where it might be hard to find in the theaters. I think it's actually was released a couple of weeks ago, and I only happened to see it because I was over here. If I hadn't come over here right now, I wouldn't have been able to see this. So I'm glad I got an opportunity to see it, because this is one that I would recommend that you see on the big screen in a movie theater, because it's not going to have the same powerful impact. Like, one of the things that really struck me was at the very beginning when they were showing the day before, it said they'd had like, oh gosh, it was like 200 some days without rain. It was so dry and it was so windy. And they show these power lines up in the mountains or the hills or whatever with the wind gusting. And just that was eerie and creepy. And like, you knew like, this is going to be bad, you know, and that was kind of very impactful because it was up on the big screen and it gave you more of an overview of like the setting and stuff. And so I would recommend that you see this one in theaters if you get the opportunity before it goes away. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. If you liked it, please be sure to give me a thumbs up. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.